Welcome to Barrio Voices, where we highlight the voices of our barrios, familias, and communities. This is Velas, and I hope you're having a good one. Sit back and enjoy la plática. Órale.
What's up, everybody tuning in? We're waiting for the homie Sangre Indigena Art to come in, and we'll be chopping it up again. The premise of today is just talking about, the importance of shopping local. It's always beneficial for our values to be invested in. You know what I mean? So it's important for us to have this talk about how do we invest in the values, right? Buy local, support local, mom and shop pops, the local vendors, right? Especially for our holidays. I hope that y'all are staying home, right? But if you are buying some flowers for some loved ones or whatever, hit up the vendors around the block and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so that's what we're gonna be talking about. Again, Sangre Indigena Art a little bit more as well. Good local artists doing a lot of dope work out there in New York. Someone else that you should also invest in as well. So, carnal, ¿cómo estás? Hey, it's nice seeing you again, eh?
How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I see that you have your display in the back too, eh?
Yeah, man. When you're in artist,
good.
your house looks like a museum, right?
All right, that's cool. I like that. It's always a pleasure, man. I know we talked a couple of times over the phone and all that, but it's nice to actually see, your workspace. It actually is pretty exciting right off the bat. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I was just introducing you just a little bit already, but I wanted to, give you a chance of again, introducing yourself. I know people have already heard about you a little bit because of the podcast. Having you in the episode at one time really was a pleasure and a great honor, right? To really get to have the glimpse of your expertise, where you're coming from, your intentionality with your art, stuff like that. And I know it's something you've been doing for a long time. So can you give us a little bit of the background, right? The purpose behind the arte, where's it stemming from, where's it carrying you, even to this day.
So again, thank you for having me. This obviously means a lot. And I love that technology can bring us together. I'm all the way from New York and you're all the way in Cali. So, that's something that we never imagined that we could do at some point, but we're able to connect at this point. And things have become a little bit, strange and different now with stay-at-home orders. I know probably New York is coming soon, and I know that you guys are doing that. But again, thank you for having me. Again, I know a lot of you guys have listened to the podcast. I've shared it multiple times with my family and my friends, and and obviously all the episodes that you've had on. It's always good to see that we're helping each other within the community. Art is been there for me, as I explained in the podcast, from the very beginning. And I know that, when I'm asked this question, I sometimes can go tangent because it's such a big topic or a big question. But I think what I can really simplify what this art means to me, it's really three different words that I can use. And believe me, I don't think I didn't choose them to be all ours, but I think for me, it's about resistance. It's about reclaiming, and it's about resilience for me. And this is what that art means for me. So I think reclaiming is a really big topic of mine. I think that if you look back on our history, there's so much stuff that we've forgotten, right? And we dove a little bit about that in the podcast about, coming from places like Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Peru. We have a history that didn't start in 1492, right? It started way beyond that. But unfortunately, we're only told after 1492. So for me, it's about reclaiming that history back, right? Reclaiming that ancestry that we have that goes further than even the colonial terms of Mexicano, Guatemalteco, or Latino, or all of that. So me, it's about reclaiming that, and also once obviously having been given that knowledge and understanding, it's also about resisting, right? It's about AKA decolonizing yourself, right? So for me, it's continuing that journey. I've been privileged to have that information or learning that information, but it's also about you know, resisting all of that. So for me, it's been a spiritual path, right? Learning about what my ancestors have left, that, you know, right, and our communities back home in Guatemala, you know, people don't realize that places like Mexico again and Peru and Guatemala, they're predominantly indigenous, right? And kind of learning from those communities and kind of, so, you know, being able to learn not just history, but from a spiritual standpoint, and resilience too, right? Like, you know, we weren't meant to be, like, I wasn't meant to be here talking to you, right? I was, when I was born in Guatemala, you know, the life expectancy there is not, you know, all these things that were stacked up against us, the odds. You know, I always talk about my father's journey to this country when he came undocumented. And I think about what could have gone wrong, right? Like, he left his family. You know, so many of our brothers and sisters take that same path and they never make it back. So what would have happened if my dad never made it, right? What if something bad would have happened? I wouldn't have had this privilege to have, you know, to have this opportunity to be here comfortably, and you know, and through all of that, we're still here. And you know, all that long 500-year history of things that were always trying to either take us down or break us apart, but we're still here. So the best way that I can describe what this art means to me is it's reclaiming my ancestry, my roots, my identity, my spirituality. It's about resisting the colonial things that has been placed on us, but it's also about showing our resilience, right? You know, Trump is just one other person that has come, and he'll be, obviously he's leaving. There's going to be other things that are going to come, and we're still going to be here. So I think for me, those three things really come to my mind when it comes to my artwork.
Yeah, something that came right off the bat, you know, that stayed in my mind was the immediate sense of like the family part, right? Understanding who you are from, you know, from your family's roots, and then extending that beyond, right? Like, you know, historically, and it's beyond just like going to like the ancestral background and todo eso también, right? Pero to my mind just came like with my family, right? When I talk to my abuelita, when I talk to my mom, my dad, right? Or anybody that's in my social circle within my family, right? We're always talking about like our stories, right? And what they have resonating, what they have, you know, what kind of seeds they planted onto us, right? And for us to carry on también, right? And so for me, it's really a pleasure to have, like, for one, you know, I had an episode with my abuelita, right? Talking about her time with the huelga, you know, and talking about, like, you know, her own ways of activism and so on. And having the talks with my, I never recorded an episode with my mom, but she has talked to me before también about her, like, her story migrating over here too, right? And all these stories definitely have like a sense of it brings us a sense of reinforcement, right? Of like, damn, like we've gone through so much, right? And like I said, right? Like, we always got to continue on and continue pushing, and continue, like I said, like you said, reclaiming, you know, resisting, and also reshaping the way the you know the society is and things like that, right? So it's like perfect that today we're talking about again you know, shopping local, right? Because that's a way of like reclaiming where the money goes, right? Because, you know, definitely during holidays, right? Or even like thinking about Valentine's. Valentine's is a date where like people shop the most too, you know, for Valentine's, you know. And you know, I contribute to myself as well, right? You know, unfortunately. But también, when it comes down to like holiday shopping, you know, it's important to shop local. It's important to shop, especially with places that are not doing social justice work because of opportunity, right? The opportunistic side of, like, you know, it's the marketing where like Nike is, you know, following the social justice drive, you know, Apple or other products, I mean, right? But we've been doing this for, you know, from way back, you know, like you said, you know, you've been doing art since you're a morito, right? You know, doing art in a purposeful manner where, again, is all about, you know, it's the reinforcing who we are, you know, strengthening our roots, understanding who we are, and also spreading that sense of belonging, sense of identity onto others all across the country, man. Like, you know, I think I've seen people as they post some of your prints on the walls, right, over here on Cali as well, right? My wall needs a print from your state by you as well. You know, me only got one so far.
It's
But like,
coming.
again, you know, much love for that. But again, you've done a lot of dope work. Again, you know, contributing to like that, you know, positive reinforcement of like, damn, we're dope and we're doing a lot of good things out here in the community, right? And so for others that want to, like, you know, shop, you know, find your products, and support you and support other local vendors, how could they do that? And what would be the reason of doing that,
You
you
know,
know, from your standpoint?
you know, one thing that you know, when you do your research and you learn all these things, obviously things like your spirituality, your identity, you know, help you understand a little bit better. But it's also about how we used to conduct ourselves, right? Unfortunately, we live in a capitalist world, and you know, it's hard to be able to overcome that, right? Because we need that right now. We need to go out there and work and earn a living. But I think we could be smart with our dollars, right? We don't necessarily have to always look for big corporations in these times like holidays or Valentine's Day. We could be smart, right? You know, the one thing that I would say about artists and local artists or merchants or jewelry makers or authors from our neighborhood or our communities, we do things with love, right? It's not your cookie cutter machine made things, right? Like big corporations. So it'd be smart for us to really look at where we're putting our money, right? Who are we investing on, right? We keep talking about Nike. We keep talking about all these corporations that a lot of the times obviously they're not from our community. They don't know, you know, what we go through. People like myself, to me, when you support me, it's not just a matter of myself, but I don't know if you guys if you've noticed, but a lot of the things that I do is I always give back. And the business model that I have right now, it's not necessarily about my own gain. It's about how I can help those communities, right? Because those are what our ancestors used to do, right? It was a community effort to keep all of us fed, to keep all of us protected and supported. I mean, I'm only one man, but I'm trying to kind of show how we can do that. So investing in a local artist or a small business during the holidays can go a long way, right? Some of us use that money to even feed our own family. I'm lucky enough that I have a full-time job that does provide for my family, but I'm still trying to figure out how I can continue this art business, but not just for my own monetary gain, but also to support communities out there that I hope that I can continue to support. I made a big investment, you know, this last month by purchasing a professional printer, and for me that could be dollar signs if you're looking at a business standpoint. But the one thing that resonated with me is that when I do these fundraisers, I cut out the middleman, right? I don't have to go to a print shop and put my money down in order to give. And now I have the ability to do it in-house, and I can give more money when I'm doing particular things like fundraising for printers. I got rid of the middleman. And I think that that's kind of advice that I give all those people that are starting off small business or artists. Give back to the community. And it goes back to that old cliche where whatever you put out in the earth, you put out in the universe is going to come back. So for me, it's that. But also keep in mind that kids are watching, right? Like, that's why I love indigenous thought and knowledge about 7 generations. Like, we don't do something that is just for our current event, right? We think about the future events, right? We think about the future generation. So your kids are watching. So for me, that's another important thing that is important to me. I have 3 children that, you know, see what I do. And, you know, they're talking about what they want to do when they grow up, right? They talk about, okay, I want to become a lawyer, but what kind of lawyer? Are you going to be an immigrant lawyer that practices to support our people? Like, that's the kind of mind that I think we're trying to teach our kids. So those things are very important as well.
Yeah, and I agree too, because even myself, right? Like, I have a younger brother, and I know he doesn't really look up to me as nearly as I wish he would, right? But I know that he's looking, right? I know he's paying attention, right? So every time I'm doing something, I like to talk to my parents about it, and I like to, kind of like speak about it around him, right? Because they're definitely watching, they're definitely learning, and following those kind of paths, right? And I only have that, it's their little brother, but imagine like for you, someone that has already their family, right? Or like even if it's the siblings or even others that are looking at you too, they're following those steps. And like you said, that'll continue on like as a ripple effect for the next couple of generations. So again, the work that you're doing really does have a great say in what goes on in the future, right? In terms of our sense of identity, sense of it's the community here in the U.S. overall, especially like you said in New York, that's way farther than like this the to Latin America than anything else, right? And it's the in the U.S. it's the there's a question that says we need to highlight our gente yeah, basically. Yeah, so his question is basically we need to highlight our gente. I don't even know if that's a question, but it's more like a comment, like we need to
Yeah.
start continue highlighting our own kind,
In the capitalist filter, right, we're made to think that we're in competition with everybody, right? Like, and that's why I think for me it's trying to not be kind of have my eyes on a dollar sign, right? It's about how I can support somebody that is coming up or somebody who needs the help, because that the reality is that, knock on wood, God, something happens to me, I know that I have a whole community that's going to watch for me, right? And highlighting each other within a community is super important. It's something that we don't do often, and we were told and we were taught not to, right? The other day I got into a debate with a fellow person online, and he was talking about how he doesn't like me because I'm Central American, and I'm like I'm way beyond that. Like I'm that's something that I don't even, borders to me don't exist, right? They don't really, when you really look at our history, we were all the same people. So the competition, I think, is probably what's hurting us as a community from the get-go, right? We have to, like that person said, is highlight each other, support each other, because that's extremely important to do, and get rid of this whole notion that we're in competition with each other. We're not. The more we support each other, the stronger we are.
Yeah, that's right. And for those that tune in a little late, that are just tuning in, again, we're talking about how do we continue to support our barrios, right, by shopping local. How do we continue to invest in our barrios? How do we, again, not, go put our money into like Nike or anything. I keep on saying Nike, but there's a lot of other things out there, right, that we're shopping at, right? And to rather support local, like on pages on Etsy, or just people like Sangre Indigena Art, or just other people. I have a post that I made as well that's recommending different local people that are doing great work, like Esa Art, Tonancy Clothing, and just a lot of other different folks that I feel like, again, are doing things from their heart. There's a lot of other people out there that I just forgot to mention or don't know, right? Don't know of. So if you all do have people out there, send them our way, we'd definitely like to, repost them on our page as well. Because again, like our brother just said right now, it was always, a beneficial thing to help each other out, right? Not just doing things because for ourselves, right? Like you said, in the capitalistic society, we're always thinking about ourselves, but doing things because we care for one another, we want to highlight one another, and doing things again with the intention of having that impact for the next 7 generations and so on, right? Like if there's someone out there probably looking at this and just thinking about like, oh damn, like this, they're talking about me, not really resonating with what they're saying, and continue to do the research and do the learning about themselves, right? Even for myself, when people planted those seeds on me, right? That encouraged me to do that. So that encouraged me to read books. That encouraged me to do all these different things, right? That again allowed me to further understand who I was, right? Who I am right now. And so again, we're just planting seeds as encouraging people to shop local, support local, and the mom and pop shops, right? That are doing dope work within the communities. Even I know Giving Tuesday was just around the corner last week, I think, and I know people were supporting a lot of grassroots people as well, right? So in addition to that, we can continue supporting by, like I said, shopping local, shopping at,
Right.
it's the.
We don't have to wait for one day of the year to give, right?
Yeah.
That's that's how far gone we are, that we need a day to remind us, to give back. I mean, for us who come from places that unfortunately are feeling the impact of this capitalist world, like we have so much to give back. Like we have not only our homelands to think about, because we've been privileged to be in this position where we don't have to fend for the things that that our fathers used to have to, right? My father was somebody who had you know, he couldn't feed his 4 kids, and he had to do what he had to do. And you know, that's the number one debate that I get with people who are against undocumented, I don't like to say illegal, immigration. That's the one thing that I will say. I'm like, if your kid's stomach is grumbling, you got nothing to feed them, you best believe you're going to do what it takes to do that. So, you know, that privilege that we have, that we're here, that we could do the little bit that I can, I'm going to give back. And that also goes to communities here, right? We have barrios, we have reservations, we have all these places that need our support. But yet we want to think about what's the next, you know, dope sneaker that's coming out. But when giving that money to I would hate to keep picking on Nike, because that's something that is so popular in our neighborhoods, but we don't think like Nike does not care about us. As a matter of fact, Nike wants to keep us the way that we are so they can keep making their money. And that's why I think it's important for us to shop small and shop within our communities, because we eventually do care for each other. So I think that's just important to say. So
yeah, we're not bashing on Nike, we're not bashing on big corporations or whatever. We're saying again, if you have the oportunidad to give to a local community member, you know, do so, right? I know people that, you know, a tia of mine, right? She does flores, the flower decorations. I forgot how, you know, if you were trying to order like a bouquet of flowers, you know, she delivers and stuff like that. So things like that, you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to support people like that, you know, that are doing, again, things for the community, that are doing things because, you know, because there's the passion, is what they love doing, especially if it's relating to, you know, the benefit of like understanding who we are, you know, and just social justice, you know, related, right? You know, again, doing things that reinforce who we are, you know, strengthen our roots, strengthen our identities here in the U.S., like I mentioned, you know, especially, you know, I think, I don't know, not to get academic, but we're talking about Nepantla, right, being between places, right, but having like that identity of like, oh no, we belong here, you know, I see myself in this space and so on. And so, yeah, I've seen you doing that a lot, you know, even like, you know, capturing from different kind of perspectives, you know, even like I believe on, you know, May 4th, right, you had a little Star Wars thing going on, yet
yeah,
still like, you know, tying it down to a root. So again, there's different ways for us to embrace our indigeneity, our roots, our
right.
whatever roots we have, you know, is to embrace them overall.
And you know, I hate to bring this up, but like the Selena series that just came out, like,
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
that wasn't made by us. That wasn't, you know, that story was, you know, it's a shame to kind of have seen that, you know, because we have a story to tell there, and when they didn't allow us, and when they don't allow us to tell our own story, things like that happen. So, you know, the reason why you know, I did something like the piece that I did for Star Wars, and it was an educational piece, is because we're not taught our own history. We're not taught these things. And when you turn the TV on, you know, half of the time, or I would say most of the time, we're portrayed in a way where it's, you know, we're narcos, we're drug dealers, we're so on, et cetera, et cetera. But we're so much more than that, right? So like when I did that Star Wars thing, people didn't realize how much of that came from our history, right? Like, and again, that's important for me. Like the way that the things that I do, the things that I paint are a reflection of who we are, because you know, like I mentioned in the podcast, that's my biggest inspiration, is for us to see ourselves in that light, right? And I bring up my mom's house, where, you know, or most of our houses where we're predominantly Catholic, and we grow up looking at, you know, these figures or these things that don't look like us. So that's why it's important for me in my work, is to portray ourselves in this way, so we could start having that pride that we need to have. And it's really important that we do that, right? And it's hard because, you know, for me, like I said in the podcast, I grew up thinking I was a certain person, which I'm completely not. And my dad used to have a saying where he would say, you know, make sure that you know who you are before they tell you who you are. So for the longest time, I was who they were telling me to be, and that does a lot of damage. And when you uncover those things and you look at who you truly are, man, there's a sense of pride that nobody can take that away from you. And it's medicine. It's something that can heal generational trauma that we carry from long time ago. So for me, that's really important. And I guess in a nutshell, it could be representation. But it really is important to me for when somebody sees, and especially my son, when he looks at himself and in those pictures and he's wowed, he's not gonna have those moments when he's in school, when they're teaching them about European history, where they're teaching him about all these things that he doesn't see himself in there. And I know how that feels. So part of my art is to do that, is to have our kids see themselves and have that pride, because we earned it. Like, this is something that we don't talk about, right? Like, we discovered chocolate. Like we talked about zero before the Greeks did. Like all these things that we can have a whole 2-hour session about, in which I'm still learning, and I'm not no scholar, but the little bit of that I've learned, nobody can take that away from me, that sense of pride, and I think a lot of us need that.
Yeah, and also I was just looking at the questions that we've had. Yes, there's some folks were talking about, what about families that can afford to, stay, support local vendors or local sale, right? Or the people that can support, they are living frugally, right? And it's got, money is to go to Dollar Tree, Walmart, whatever. But again, we're talking about those that have the opportunity to give, right? Those that have the opportunity to, give an extra dollar, right? Even for the farm worker families, if there's toy drives out there for the farm worker families, make sure to donate too if you can, right? If you are able to give them one way or another, make sure that you all do so, And we're not saying you must, right? But, we're saying this is an opportunity for you to give back to your community one way or another, right? There's one way. There's a millions of other ways for you to give back to your community, right? But, in this sense, we're talking about, again, how Sangre Indigena Art was just mentioning when the beginning is that reclaiming, right? Reclaiming. So how could we reclaim the holidays to be something that's more about community building, right? Rather than, exploiting us and having us, buy all kinds of, things that, are not necessary, right? How can we invest the money or, purchase things that are more likely going to be reinforcing our well-being, right? In terms of identity or just a meaning of life, rather than instead buying something that is materialistic and easily dispensable, right? And so, that's just, my little answer to that question.
A really good call out, right? Because, when I set the prices for what I do, I always try to make sure that it's accessible to our communities. And I know that that's really hard to do from a business model standpoint. But that is I'm very conscious about that. I have to make sure that I cover my materials. I have to make sure that I cover my time, but I also want to make sure that it's accessible to our community. And that's hard. And that's why I think if we are going to be somebody who, like myself, who has a certain community that they want to reach, just make sure that it's not an exploitation, right? It's something that you're doing it for all these reasons. And for me, it's easier said than done, because that's just the way that this came about, is for the love of my community. It may be harder for other businesses to do, but also we got to keep in mind, we don't want to exploit our communities either. We don't want to do that, but I think that that's also part of giving back a little as well. So to keep that in mind, that's always what I have in the filter that I use. Is not just about selling this much. It's about all the things that we spoke about that I'm providing for my community, just based on looking at it. And it doesn't cost anything to reshare or repost or even talk about a business, and that helps out a lot too. So it's tough, but yeah.
Simon, let me read some of the comments too. A lot of people again, there's a lot of people doing a lot of the good work. A lot of creators are doing things from the bottom of their heart, right? And it's on the spare time, or just because that's their purpose, right? And so again, just continue to reinforce that purpose. Continue to support local mom and pop shops. I don't know if you got anything else to add, but I want to add that también one way to do that too is like, I got these calendars here too that again it's talking about, it's just local murals out here in the community that really are, again, based off like, sharing the story that of ourselves, right? This one's out here in the Mission, right? In the Mission District out here in Cali, right? There's other murals out there that are dope that speak about, who we are. This one's out here in Dakota, right here in the Bay too. But got some dope ones too, like for example, this one in Burke. And so the purpose of this one right here, right? Example, next an example is that again I want to make sure that y'all know that these things are within your own barrios, you know what I mean? That out here in San Jose, there's like 4 or 3 murals out here, you know what I mean? Out there in Uruguay, there's 2 murals that are, it's a Chicano related and Chicanx related, right? There's murals everywhere, right? That you could always go visit and just be empowered by it, you know what I mean? And just know that again, there's people that were trying to do the work, around that time. He's putting up these murals within our own communities, in Salinas and in the different kind of cities all around the state, across the country too, I bet there's a lot of murals out there over there in New York as well that are reflective of our identities as well, but, that's, one way, you could, again, purchase something that will really reflect, who we are in the community, right? Pero también, I don't know if you have any other merch that you want to like share with the audience right now too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody could just go to either on my Instagram or my website for to view what I have. But I think volunteerism is also super important, and I know that, like I had mentioned, that most businesses, may not have the luxury of not pricing for our community, and they have to recoup sometimes. But I think volunteerism is the answer to that. Like, what are you doing within the community that doesn't cost you $1, right? Like, are you going to schools to talk to kids, or taking that time to do some volunteering work can go a very long way. But yeah, that's it. I'm very passionate about that. Like, again, this is how this whole started. It wasn't a business model. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna do this to make money. It's like all these things about how I was feeling, who am I, kind of came to be. And I think that when you have that filter in your business, it can really not only support you, but also support your community around you. So again, my website is sangreindigenaart.com, and obviously you guys can follow me on Instagram. Cool. And where could you buy some of your art? Just my website. That all my artwork is there. I post the originals, and that's the thing. I know that the art scene, a lot of artists strive to get to that point where it's their galleries, but you don't really need that anymore. That scene is not for us, and it's not there for us. So I think being a little bit smarter of looking at how it's accessible to our communities, like Instagram has been really easy for me to do. It's free to the public to view. It's easy for somebody to DM me and say, hey, how much does this cost? But the website as well also has been really helpful. And I don't need art curators. I don't need galleries to show. My biggest dream at some point is to have, a showing somewhere in our homeland, like either in Mexico or Guatemala. And it wouldn't, for me, that's just something that I hope that happens one day. But for me, it's been those two things that have been accessible to the community, which would be Instagram and my website. Cool. Bueno, pues yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Our next IU Live is going to be with Drifting on Memories. Again, he's been on the podcast before. We're talking a little bit more about, how we going to, well, you stay tuned. I don't want to spoil it so far. I got to talk to the homie exactly what he wants to talk about. But again, we've had him in the podcast. The main point was, again, embracing your cultura, embracing your roots, and he's talking about, how do we continue doing that until 2021, you know what I mean? But there's more to come, we're going to have that homie on the line, right? But there's a lot of other, good guest speakers coming your way as well. Stay tuned, continue supporting. For those that missed out, the podcast will be aired on Monday, on Sunday, actually Sunday morning. So, just know that you could tune in back to this, later on at a later time, you know what I mean? But again, gracias everybody. Gracias Sangre Indigena Art. Continue doing what you're doing. And then let me know about the poster. I definitely want to buy one out for you, man. Absolutely. Thank you. Pues, cuídense todos.